Now let's try this again. Hey, this is me. And I'm going to read an article from the New York Times because this is what I do when I'm taking a break from mind-altering interviews and deep dives into obsessive-compulsive psychopathological behaviors of people in academia and the promotion world. This article's name is How Twitter's Ban on Quote-Unquote Dead Naming Promotes Free Speech. I think it's interesting that they put dead naming in quotes. Either it is a thing or it's not a thing. But they seem to be of an opinion that it could either exist or not exist. The subheading is, trans people are less likely to speak up if they know they're going to be constantly told they don't exist. Now, this is interesting, and this is what is conflated in the article. The difference between what someone is and who they are. I think a lot of people aren't questioning the existence of who someone is so much as questioning the existence of certain categories that are emerging into the public consciousness and are contentious almost by their very nature, if not because of the way that our society is set up. Specifically, trans identities, which I'm doing an ongoing series on. This article is by Parker Malloy. Ms. Malloy is editor-at-large at Media Matters for America. The article reads, in September, Twitter announced changes to its hateful conduct policy, violations of which can get users temporarily or permanently barred from the site. The updates, an entry on Twitter's blog explained, would expand its existing rules, quote, to include content that dehumanizes others based on their membership in an identifiable group, even when the material does not include a direct target, which is pretty squishy. So anything that dehumanizes somebody, even if it doesn't do so directly, can get you barred from the site. It's a lot of leeway for the people in charge of Twitter to enforce their opinions on the public that's using Twitter. While much of the basic framework stayed the same, the latest version leaves much less up for interpretation. Its ban on, quote, repeated and or non-consensual slurs, epithets, racist and sexist tropes, or other content that degrades someone was expanded to read, quote, we prohibit targeting individuals with repeated slurs, tropes, or other content that intends to dehumanize. What does that really mean? Degrade, I understand that, or reinforce negative or harmful stereotypes about a protected category. How is this not up for interpretation? Are we only supposed to champion the positive stereotypes? And what if the positive stereotype for a man is being masculine, but that stereotype is seen as negative for everybody else if a man is masculine? Who gets to decide what all these subjective categories, these categories of a linguistic and cultural makeup, actually mean? Who defines these things? To continue, this includes, and this is the point of the whole article, this includes targeted misgendering or dead naming of transgender individuals. You notice how they slipped in the word targeted. If you offhandedly say, oh man, get out of here, hey you guys, if you're saying that out in the open and not targeting anybody, maybe that is not covered by this policy, but at the same time, if you say, hey you guys, you might be enforcing the negative stereotype that guys is the gender non-specific or non-gender plural word in English up to this point. And now we just have to say, hey, you Humes, or Hoobs. I don't know what a human without the man would be. Who's the final sentence, paired with the fact that the site appeared poised to actually enforce its rules, sent a rumble through certain vocal corners of the internet. To trans people, it represented a recognition that our identity is an accepted fact and that to suggest otherwise is a slur. Now, that is just weird. This is the stuff that I don't really understand. It seems like they're doing a lot of leaps of logic. How is questioning what an identity is? Is a man? Is a trans woman no longer a man? Is a trans woman a woman? Does it have to be that way? Is this biological category? Is this a cultural category? What constitutes a fact? It seems to me that a fact is a fact according to who has the ability to shut other people up who question that fact. That's what a fact is. If a fact is not rooted in empirical evidence, but rather a cultural theory, then whoever can implement that theory with the weight of reality, at least so far as perception is concerned, gets to decide what a fact is. But that is no longer a fact. It's not a fact, it's just an enforced opinion. So to trans people, it represented a recognition that our identity is an accepted fact, no questions allowed, and that to suggest otherwise is a slur. So to question this quote-unquote fact is, in fact, an assault on somebody's dignity, right? The fact doesn't matter, the feeling does. And to question the feeling that is being called a fact is to, in fact, hurt somebody's feelings and to, in fact, cause actual feeling violence upon them. To continue, to many on the right, it reeked of censorship and political correctness. Well, I'm sure that people on the left, or people to the right of the extreme left, who are still left, think that this is political correctness and is reeking of censorship. To continue, Twitter is already putting the policy into effect. Last week, it booted Megan Murphy, a Canadian feminist who runs the website Feminist Current. Ms. Murphy hasn't exactly supported trans people, especially trans women. She regularly calls trans women he and him, as she did referring to the journalist and trans woman Sean Fay in a 2017 article, which was written before the terms of service were put into effect. So this so-called fact needs to be implemented for all time. We need to backlog all of our transgressions of this new morality. This new morality wants to rewrite history, or to at least punish you for your history, before you even knew that this was a fact, when it was still open to debate. It's a retroactive morality. It's an offendedness that reaches through history. To continue, in the run-up to her suspension, Ms. Murphy tweeted that men aren't women. While this is a seeming innocuous phrase when considered without context, the men she was referring to were trans women. Notice that this person didn't say women, but trans women. A trans woman is not a woman in this very sentence. A trans woman is a trans woman. So this person is, in effect, misgendering trans women if they're not allowed to specify which women they're talking about. In fact, we're not even supposed to make that distinction anymore. To continue, as a transgender woman, I find it degrading to be constantly reminded that I am trans. But she just called herself a trans woman. As a transgender woman, she finds it degrading to be constantly reminded that she is trans, even though she just called herself transgender. So she's just degraded herself. And that large segments of the population will forever see me as a delusional freak. Well, how do you convince people that you're not a delusional freak? Well, one, you don't mess with logical categories. Two, you don't go around band-bopping people over the head like little bunny foo-foo. You know, the little fairy of logic's going to come down upon you and turn you into a goon. I'm giving you 3 chances to make sense. And I'm going to turn you into a goon. To continue, things like dead naming, notice that's not in quotes anymore, or purposefully referring to a trans person by their former name, which is dead naming, and misgendering, calling someone by a pronoun they don't use, are used to express disagreement with the legitimacy of trans lives and identities. So the discussion itself is an assault to the very identity and the lives of the trans people. How weak are you making yourself by putting your existence into the hands of other people's language, into the hands of other people's tongues? How disempowering is that? To continue, defenders of these practices claim that they're doing this not out of malice, but out of honesty and, perhaps, even a twisted sort of love. They surely see themselves as truth-tellers fighting against political correctness run amok. But sometimes, voicing one's personal truth does just one thing. it shuts down conversation. There's so many layers of irony here. But sometimes voicing one's personal truth, quote unquote, such as, I am now a she, which is a personal truth, which was an opinion until it was now instigated as fact. Somebody's voicing personal truth does just one thing. It shuts down conversation. So these other people who disagree with me are shutting down the conversation by having a different opinion. This isn't a piece that is in favor of shutting down conversation, of literally kicking people out of the conversation who want to have the conversation with you. Is not building bridges, it's burning them down and forcing everybody to walk on the coals or get the fuck out of town. That's what this is. How many layers of irony do you have to be blind to? Sometimes, as the logic behind the campus speaker argument would dictate, love that they're kowtowing to the free speech movement, we have to set parameters on speech if we want to actually have a debate on the issues. The parameters of college campus speech, you have a debate. You don't shut people down. You don't shut people out. That is the parameter. That's the fundamental parameter. That you listen to somebody and then you listen to the response. That you have a dialogue. That you actually have a debate about an issue. Cutting off debate is not the parameter for the free speech movement, but to finish the sentence, we have to set parameters on speech if we want to actually have a debate on the issues, which, in the case of trans people, are certainly not in short supply. The parameters on speech or the issues? More and better speech on this topic, even trans critics. Twitter's policy gives us the framework we need to reset our thinking. Like what happens when your computer needs an upgrade and you restart the computer because there's new software in there, reset your thinking. By fiat. That's the problem that I have. To date, we've put semantics over substance. I don't think so. I think for my part, I've done everything I can to delve into the substance of your semantics, Miss Malloy. Take the discussion following the October 21st Times report that the Trump administration was contemplating changes to federal policy that would effectively have trans people completely, quote unquote, defined out of existence. The response from trans people and our allies was that we won't be erased. The response from social conservatives tended to be that the administration was making the right call. In both cases, the focus was almost universally on whether or not trans women are actually women. The sentence itself just negates the point of the sentence. Are trans women women? Why would you call them trans women if they were just women? Okay? If trans women are actually women and trans men are actually men, rather than having a robust discussion about what practical effects a change to the Department of Health and Human Services definition of sex and gender might have, for instance, it could give rise to even more rampant discrimination than trans people already face. I really think that the discrimination of trans people is on the way out, will very rapidly go out of fashion as soon as rational trans people come to the forefront and are platformed. It could give rise to even more rampant discrimination than trans people already face, an uptick in gender-specific exclusions from insurance policies, and more. We found ourselves mired in the same stalemate. Are you saying that society itself is stuck on a certain level of discourse? Then the question isn't to throw that discourse out. The question, the hard work is to figure out how to advance the discussion. The hard work is to engage with people and is to compromise with what other people want and to figure out through that compromise how to get your way, which was what? Respect, non-discrimination. I think those are noble goals and I think you'll win in the end, but you have to go about that noble goal in a noble way for it to actually take effect and to win people's hearts over. This is the thing. You're trying to win people's hearts over. You don't win people's hearts over by cutting out their tongue. At least that's my opinion. The truth is that I'm unlikely to ever persuade people dead set on the idea that I am not who I know myself to be. And there's virtually zero chance of someone else convincing me that I'm not. So they're already in a stalemate. They themselves are looking at the world in a zero-sum fashion. They are the perpetrators of their own blockage, of their own stalemate. They're stuck in that, and what they want to do is they think, well, we're never going to change people, so we should just castigate them and throw them out, exile them. They're still going to exist in large numbers. To conclude, we need to come to terms with the fact that we won't understand what the other side feels or believes, and maybe that's okay. So they're exonerating themselves from actually like making contact with people who disagree with them and saying that that's okay. No, it's not okay. It's stupid. It's absolutely, utterly stupid. Why are you talking? Why do you have a platform if you're just saying that I'm never going to make a difference in the world? But that doesn't relieve us as a freewheeling democratic public of the responsibility to hash out thorny policy issues. By setting guardrails for that conversation, Twitter's new policy points us in that direction. In a direction of what? In the direction of people leaving the platform, of people being even more ununderstanding of trans people, because now they perceive that trans people are all about killing free speech, all about, undermining the democratic way of going about navigating society. I mean, that's the thing. So, you know what? I really hope that the New York Times opinion page will publish a trans person who is dead set against this banning policy.